Hello and welcome to another special episode of The Three Techs. I'm your host, Tony Tang, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Bob Fairbairn and Stephen Bramson. Hey, guys.
Good evening, guys.
Hello.
Well, we did an episode about a flashback to 2010 on photography and cameras and how that industry has progressed over the last 10 years. And I thought it would be appropriate for us to do a similar show for video. So looking back to 2010 for video, I'd like to talk about the video camera you were using back in 2010, what camera you're using today, and also I think it'd be interesting to talk about what kind of TV you had back then, and also what TV you have today, if you've gone through the 4K transition yet, or even 8K. And then I'd like to cap everything off by talking about the changes that we've seen for video over the last decade. So, Bob, what camera were you using back in 2010 for video?
Oh, Tony, that's tough. I have a feeling it is a VHS-C 4x3 video recorder on videotape. It was not digital at all. I did very, very little digital on cameras back then the day.
Really?
But
this was back in 2010?
I was still doing that because I had it. But really, the first thing I started shooting video with was the iPhone. And about then it would have been the iPhone 4. That's when I really started shooting more video because it was always with me. It was the iPhone 4 was my video camera at that point.
Cool. Well, what camera are you using today, Bob?
I shoot video on iPhone 11 Pro Max. That's where most of my video is shot today. I shoot some on the Micro Four Thirds camera, the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, and a little bit on my little Sony RX100 portable camera. But I would say primarily most of my video is shot on my smartphone today.
And I think it's important to point out that the iPhone 11 Pro Max can record 4K video at 60 frames a second, which is kind of mind-blowing. I mean, it is 2019 when we're recording this, but if you were to tell me in 2010 that I would be able to shoot 4K video at 60 frames a second with a phone, I wouldn't believe you.
And not only that, with high dynamic range at the same time, which is just absolutely phenomenal.
I think it's really great, the video that you get out of it. I was really impressed with the stabilization that happens within the camera itself. When I was walking with the camera, it was almost like having a gimbal in the phone itself.
Yeah,
cool.
It's amazing.
Well, Stephen, how about you? Were you shooting video at all in 2010? And what are you shooting with video today?
I just have never been into video historically. Never even into VHS. Just went straight to DVDs for viewing, but never shot video until the Three Techs. And because I was using, oddly, GH4 and GH5s for stills, they happen to make rather good video cameras, 4K video cameras at that. And actually the 3Tex it's the only thing I shoot video for, so I'm not regularly shooting personal video at all, actually.
Okay. 3Tex is a start. For me personally, in 2010, I was shooting a lot of sports, and I was using a Sony PMW EX1. It's sort of a camcorder, and it had a built-in lens. I think it was a 16 times zoom. It used 3 half-inch CMOS sensors. The way that those video cameras worked was that they would split the light into red, green, blue, and it would record each color channel on a different sensor. And that was how they maximized the quality of the video.
What was the recording medium?
It recorded on what we call S by S cards, or literally, if you saw it in writing, it was SXS. It was a Sony camera, Sony card and format. Sony was really the only manufacturer that made those. SanDisk made some at one time. They came in various sizes, but you could get a few hours of recording on a large card. Today, in 2019, I'm not sure what to call my primary video camera. I do have the Sony FS7, which is a super 35 millimeter sensor in stills format size. That would be like an APS-C size sensor. And that uses the Sony E-mount, so it's an interchangeable lens camera. Here on the 3Techs, we actually shoot with the Red Gemini. It's a 5K camera with a slightly larger than super 35 millimeter sensor. It produces great images. It shoots in RAW, 16-bit linear, internally, really incredible camera. There's some other various cameras that I have, but it's safe to say that all of them can record 4K or higher. Moving on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the TV that you were using back then and the TV that you're using today. So, Bob, what TV did you have back in 2010? And maybe you could talk about how you transitioned your way to what you have today.
In 2010, I'm very sure it was a Sony 32-inch XBR 16:9. So we'd already converted it to 16:9 for 4:3. We were ahead of the HD transition, I swear. And then today, as of 2018, a primary TV watches a medium-sized Sony 4K HDR television in the family room, which is our primary TV. I had a really tough time getting rid of that 32-inch glass tube TV, though. I put it out. It was still perfectly functional, but nobody wanted it. It ended up in recycling. But at 210 pounds, I don't think too many people wanted to pick it up.
How about you, Stephen? What do you have today, and how did you get there?
2010, I was still on 4:3 CRTs. So it was Sony Vega, which the picture was just phenomenal. I think they used to turn the CRTs up to just get a tremendously bright picture, and at the time I bought them, they just stood out, and they were only the only TV worth buying, but that was 10 years before. And then we moved home in 2011, and that was the point where, okay, time to switch. We bought I think it's a 55-inch 1080 LCD screen that's main family viewing, still viewing at 1080, and I don't see pressing reason to go to 4K at the moment.
So back in 2010, I was watching TV on a Sony, I think it was about 52, 53-inch LCD. I actually still have it, and that's still the primary household TV. It's an LCD TV. It does HD 1080p, and it still works great. I recently just recalibrated it, and the colors and everything are still within spec. I recently this year just got a 4K HDR, supports Dolby Vision, and it's actually the TV back here that you're seeing. It's actually a Vizio TV and supports 4K. So the first time I really watched 4K in the home was with this, but through a streaming service, which is kind of interesting to think about that. That kind of transitions me to the next topic, which is, what do you think were the most significant changes in the video industry within the last decade? Bob, I'm going to throw it to you.
We talked a little bit about new image file formats, and there's a new set of high efficiency video codec, HEVC, and that is what enables your streaming. Otherwise, the internet bandwidth would be not good enough to take it. All the streaming services almost are using those codecs to get the video to you, and they vary the compression, and some of it's better than others. HEVC can be really amazing, absolutely amazing, the difference between an HDR vision, Dolby 10, that dynamic range. You see so much more in the picture, so much closer to what your eye would expect. I think the video codecs and high dynamic range are two of the most important things.
I'm really excited to see new content produced with that higher resolution as well as high dynamic range. How about you, Stephen? What do you think?
I think I would choose a couple of things. So one is this 4K. So we've been talking about 4K a lot. The first high definition TV was 1080p, so that's 2K by 1K. So these days, people, at least for shooting video, expect to shoot in 4K. So this is 3820 by 2160. It's really ubiquitous, and I think the baseline expectation, even the terminology, is becoming more familiar to more people. The other big thing I would say is YouTube. You know, if you want to be able to share video or publish video. With YouTube, there is just literally zero barrier to doing that. So now anybody can publish video and make whatever they like available, and there's so much content out there that's well worth watching.
Absolutely. Like the three techs, right?
Yes.
Of course.
So a couple things there that you mentioned I thought were interesting, Stephen, is just the streaming video. Netflix, for example, requires all of their content creators to use true 4K cameras. So they've kind of set this minimum bar that your camera must meet these specs, and 4K is the minimum resolution. The other thing I think is with YouTube is that the ubiquity of smartphones and also the development of faster cellular technology like LTE and soon to come 5G, anybody can watch a YouTube video no matter where they are as long as they have a cellular connection. And I think that's really what's contributed to the tremendous growth of YouTube as a platform. For me, I think that a lot of the key developments as far as video production comes in a few different areas. So the first is drones. Drones have become really affordable and economical for almost anyone to buy with a video camera on the drone. So it's really easy to produce these aerial shots that used to require you to hire a helicopter pilot, a cameraman. It would cost many tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that. But now for under $1,000 or even a couple $100, or maybe even less than that, you could get a small toy drone with a video camera on it and shoot aerial video. So I think that was a really significant development for video. The other thing as I think back is with the smartphone and with faster cellular technology, people are able to make video calls from the palm of their hand anywhere they are in the world. So I don't think that's really a key development for video production, although, we are using FaceTime here to do our remote show. But I think that does a lot, not just for people to keep in touch socially, but also if you think about if you're calling for remote help, like I need help figuring out this piece of equipment or something, or I don't know how to do this. I could show somebody what I'm looking at and they could guide me through it from thousands of miles away, from halfway around the world. That's really become possible only in the last 10 years. And the other thing that I've seen develop over just really in the most recent couple years is this thing called deep fakes. Could be used for very bad things. If you're not familiar with it, this is where you can replace somebody's face and put it in another video and make it appear like this person said something or did something that they didn't actually do. So there's many bad uses for it, but I think that this could be developed into something for beneficial uses with the development of kind of what we talked about for photography, computational video, if you will, or using AI and deep learning to be able to make your video better or to substitute actors on a stunt double or something like that when you're producing films and movies. I'm interested to see what will come there in the next decade with AI and machine learning in general when it comes to video, not just for faking things, but for, doing useful and productive things. Now that we've taken this look back on the last 10 years, I'm interested in hearing what you think the next 10 years will bring us, Stephen.
If the 2010s were the decade of 4K, then what we have coming up is 8K. And so a line was drawn in the sand for the Tokyo Olympics coming up in 2020. Japan is the home of Sony and Panasonic, and they stated that the 2020 Olympics would be covered in 8K. So that's the next jump up. And so that's going to be interesting to see 8K come. And today people maybe shoot in 4K and then crop into 1080, and you could do the same with 8K, where you shoot in 8K and crop into 4K if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'm curious how many of our viewers are actually able to view content in 8K. So maybe leave a comment if you are, but I'm definitely not one of those people. But I think for me, The thing that I'm interested in seeing happening in video is perhaps more and more 8K cameras to help support the TVs that are coming out in 8K. There are some cameras out there that can shoot 8K. The video editing equipment, meaning the computers that we use to edit them, has become more and more powerful, which enable us to effectively produce content in 8K. So as the price of that equipment comes down and becomes more affordable, looking forward to see what would be possible with that. I think another thing that might happen is just the advancement of camera sensor technology when it comes to shooting video and stills. So one of those things, Stephen, that you mentioned in our previous video on photography, look back on the last decade, is a global shutter. I know that typically when you have a global shutter in a camera, it can reduce its dynamic range for that sensor. I think some of that is being overcome. I'm looking forward to see what Red is going to come out with their Komodo camera, which they have announced but not yet released. And they have announced that actually, probably a $5,000 or $6,000 camera, will have a global shutter on it. So that'll be interesting to see how that'll work. So I think that was an interesting look back on the last 10 years on video to see how we've come from HD to 4K and how TVs have changed, and also interesting to see what might come in the next 10 years. Let us know what you think was the most significant thing that happened for video in the last 10 years. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the 3 Techs.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.